All right, welcome to another episode of Not Investment Advice. We got the NIA boys here, Trung Phan, me, Master Flex himself, and Jack Butcher, founder of Visualize Value, and the sickest merch, Biology Was Right hoodie on today, looking clean, Jack. And I am Bilal Zaidi, host of Creator Lab, and obviously NIA co-host as well. So boys, we got a big one this week. It is May the 4th when this comes out, tomorrow morning. And we all know what that is for Star Wars. So our boy Trung is going to do a special breakdown of George Lucas and the amazing work they did on Star Wars. We're going to break that down. We've got a meme of the week coming in a second.
Well, wait, hold on. Namely, we're breaking down how he gave up $150K to make the movie, and it ended up being worth $10 billion.
There we go.
So one of the greatest deals in movie Hollywood history.
And we're going to maybe hear a little bit about Trung's movie history as well.
My own journey with the film that will not be worth $10 billion.
Exactly. All right. So, and then just to let people know what's coming down later as well, we've got a couple other segments on, if you guys remember Obama O's, the cereal that the Airbnb founders launched originally to fund a part of their company. We're going to talk about that as it applies to NFTs and what that would be like if they had launched an NFT project instead. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Yuga Labs and this ApeCoin stuff that has been going on. It's been there's been quite a lot to follow there. Jack's going to break that down for us. And then Trung's got a special exclusive on his writing in Bloomberg. We're going to talk about methane and crypto, whatever that is. So
Bitcoin. So natural gas flaring is an output, a byproduct of the oil and gas industry. But Bitcoin, the mining of it, has found a way potentially to offset this very dangerous climate situation.
There we go. But to kick it off, as always, we've got meme in the week, and there's only one place to start. Trung, you want to take it away for us, mate?
Yeah. So for the listeners and viewers, and I just found out that Jack Butcher has never seen Star Wars. So now I'm assuming that there's a percentage of our listeners that has never seen Star Wars, which is one of the most iconic movies of the last 50 years, arguably top 10. But every May the 4th, which it is today, the tagline, our famous line from the movie Star Wars was, of course, "May the Force be with you." So a bunch of these geeky fans, myself included, we lose our minds when May the 4th comes out because, you know, May the 4th, it's a pun, whatever. But Mark Hamill, who played Luke Skywalker, is teeing up May the 4th. So in the lead up to May the 4th, he starts tweeting out May the 1st. So this one, he says, "May the 1st not be the worst with you." It looks like a scene here where he pokes his eye out with Obi-Wan Kenobi, legendary actor Alec Guinness. So there we are. But before we get into how George Lucas turned down a $500,000 contract, he accepted a $350,000 contract. So that's $150,000 pay cut to make Star Wars. But in the future, that ended up being worth $10 billion because of certain merchandising and sequel rights. Before we get into that, Jack Butcher, explain yourself. How have you never seen Star Wars?
I watched episode 1 in the cinema, I think, when I was, when did that come out? Early 2000s?
97. Oh, 99, 99. Yeah.
So I'd have been 11 for that. Didn't hook me, mate, so I didn't go and explore the rest of the franchise.
Well, you do know that episode 1 was actually the 4th film in the series, of course, right?
I do know it was out of order, but I could not tell you how many it was out of order. Yeah.
That's surprising because Jack, one thing I know about Jack is Jack loves the franchise, whereas Domino's, Costco, Orange County, the whole region is basically a franchise.
Wait, not only does Jack Butcher like a franchise, he is a narrative storyteller. And Star Wars, which came out in 1977, arguably is the most influential Hollywood movie in terms of storytelling because George Lucas integrated the hero's journey into that film. And essentially I'll give it a majority of films since has adopted this hero's journey, which was by Joseph Campbell. The TLDR being that most mythological stories and stories for thousands of years, they follow this journey. I know Bilal Zaidi knows it because as an advertiser, Bilal wanted to put the consumer in a journey, right? Bilal, is this correct? You're well aware.
Yeah, we talked about it in the charity episode, I think, because we were talking about one of the things that I didn't understand was the guide, because there's a part of the hero's journey, which is about the guide. Often you think, sorry, wait, I'm getting confused. Not guide. There's the hero of the journey is not necessarily just that one character, though often it could be. But in the charity example that we talked about many episodes ago, the main character essentially there is the donor, the person who's going to become the hero. Exactly. And you're the guide, the organization in this case, and you're inviting them to be that person. So Nike, you could say, they're the guide for you to be the hero in your own story.
Yes.
You're going to run the marathon.
Your fitness journey.
Exactly. So, yeah, that is a very interesting idea. Do you, I don't know, it sounds very academic, but like, you're obviously a great writer in what you're doing, both of you.
I'm going to break down the hero's journey today, boys.
All right. Let's get straight into it then. Go on, Trung. Let's talk about George Lucas. High level, you already teed it up.
Okay, so let's go to 1967. George Lucas has graduated from University of Southern California. He has a film degree. He starts a production company with a gentleman by the name of Francis Ford Coppola. He made a couple movies called The Godfathers. Have we seen The fucking Godfather? Can you guys give me that?
Okay, yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jesus Christmas. All right. So these guys, they set up shop in San Francisco. They didn't want to do it in Hollywood. They're trying to get away from the traditional studio system. And actually in the late 60s, Hollywood is in decline. There's a lot of thought that the entire industry was going to go the way of the doo-doo, which is kind of crazy to think about, right? Like a cultural hegemony of Hollywood in the last 50 years. So in 1971, Lucas releases a film. It's based on his student work. It's called THX 1138. It's about robots, similar to these sci-fi themes that he later explores with Star Wars. Yeah, not a really big hit, kind of a small potatoes thing. But here's the kicker. That's 1971. 1 year later, Francis Ford Coppola releases The Godfather. And The Godfather, ka-ching, brings like in the money. Yeah. So American Zoetrope, the production studio, is awash with money now. And Coppola goes to Lucas. He's like, dude, I know you got all these things you want to make. Let's start making them. So George Lucas has two ideas. He wants to make one movie called American Graffiti. And the other movie he wants to make, it's not a movie, it's a 9-part story, of which Jack Butcher watched part 4 out of order. And actually part 1, but it was out of order. There's a 9-part story that was a space opera. The problem is in the early 1970s, this is way before Marvel, motherfuckers were not making sequels and cinematic universes. So everybody thought this dude was out of his rocker. So Francis Ford Coppola's like, go ahead, make American Graffiti. American Graffiti is about George Lucas's childhood growing up in California. The movie, he got paid $150K to make it. And the film actually crushed it. Absolutely crushed it. It made $140 million or $780,000 budget. And it starred or had a small part for an individual by the name of Harrison Ford, who would later play an iconic character in Star Wars. So let's go to the Star Wars story. This is where it officially starts. So George Lucas just notches a huge win. George Lucas, Jack just told me I'm too loud, so I moved the mic. Okay, listeners, apologies.
Yeah, it's all right.
Not too loud. There's some breath work coming through there.
Let's keep this part in so people know.
Because Jack, well, the thing is, like, for the listeners, these guys can tell how excited I'm getting as I'm walking through this story. All right. So the boy, George Lucas, who is now a man because he got $144 million on a $70,000 budget.
He got that Elon money at this point. He's ready to whip it out on the table.
His boy did Godfather 1. He just did American Graffiti. A year later, his boy does Godfather 2. These guys are rocking and rolling right now. So George Lucas goes to the studio, goes to Fox, and goes, listen, guys, I'm making this 9-part space epic that Jack Butcher will one day watch. And then they get it to the studio, and the guy's like, this is a little bit extreme. A lot of the space type of content in the past, the comic books primarily, Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon, kind of campy, right? A little bit corny. I don't know if you guys remember Flash Gordon. You guys remember Flash Gordon?
I just know the name. Yeah, I don't know much about it.
Corny AF.
Like pants over the trousers sort of vibe,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he goes in for this 9-film epic, and they're like, they laughed him out. They're like, this is insane. It's like, we will pay you $500K just make the one movie. Okay. Just do one space Western. He's like, no. I'll tell you what I'll do. I will take $150,000. So he didn't take a $150,000 pay cut. He took a $350,000 pay cut. 70%
so wait, Trunk,
pay
they
cut.
offered him $500K, but he took $150 to get more on the back end, I guess.
No, to do this. He's like, I want sequel rights. I want to own the rights to the sequels. And they laughed. They're like, you will never make a sequel to this movie.
Because back then, people didn't really do sequels, you're saying.
Exactly. Like Godfather 2 came out, but that was a rarity, right? So he gives up $350,000, takes a massive pay cut to do this movie. Sure enough, his instincts were correct. The Star Wars comes out, makes $775 million on an $11 million budget. So now he really is richer than Elon Musk. But this is the kicker. Fox still had the toy rights, the merchandising rights. So we're going to talk about this in the future when it comes to the Obama. So they had the merchandising rights, and they sold $100 million worth of toys in 1977. So a little bit of a competition is arising here. So George Lucas has the sequel rights to the film. Fox has the toy rights. Money is to be made. But those toy rights are useless with Fox if Lucas doesn't keep making movies. So Lucas really puts his balls on the table now. He goes into Fox and says, this is the deal, boys. I want the merchandising rights, including television and music, toys. Here's a trailer. I will make another movie for you guys. I will make Empire Strikes Back. I will personally finance it myself. You guys get to distribute it. So basically he's saying you get something instead of nothing if I don't do anything. So they gave him the merchandising rights. And remember, this all began because he took the sequel rights on a $350,000 pay cut, a 70% pay cut. And then I'll kind of rip through what's happened since. It's been frankly insane. We'll do a quick screen share, but we'll just look at the numericals. So here for the listeners, we're looking at how much money the Star Wars movies have made. They've made a combined $4.3 billion on a $400 million budget, so 10x. The movie that Jack saw, The Phantom Menace, actually is the only movie to cross $1 billion. There's a lot of hype around that movie, even though it sucked massive balls. To Jack's credit, that was not a good film. So fair enough. But here we go. So by 2005, now there have been 6 movies. Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clone, and Revenge of the Sith. But here is the genius of George Lucas. So he had the merchandising and sequel rights. The box office combined for Star Wars was $4 billion for those 6 films. But how much money did he make from the merch? $12 billion on toys, $4 billion on DVDs and movies, video cassette, $3 billion on games, $2 billion on comic books. So in total, he made $21 billion in merch. Jack, you do merch game. Let me ask you a question, Jack. Merch versus the original product. What is a good split on that?
I just think this industry is so different because the merch possibilities are so insanely wide reaching. And I wonder how much this breaks the mold. I would think 50-50 would be like off the charts.
Okay.
Good,
so like it's 50-50 and this is 80-20, 80% merch.
Yeah. And that's a number I'm completely pulling out my ass. But the idea that like you would build a product and then like the byproduct of the product is bigger than the product is something quite special, right?
That sounds like a visualized value.
Yeah.
NFT in the making there, mate.
The byproduct.
I'm seeing like a squared sign, but the squared sign is
the meme,
bigger.
Man, he made a meme, right? And
he made a meme.
He
exactly.
atomized the meme with merch.
Well, part of the reason he made the meme, and we mentioned it briefly, was the hero's journey. So the original idea was a very campy space Western, is how he kind of described it, a space opera. And then he read Joseph Campbell's A Hero with a Thousand Faces. We don't need to actually go bit by bit through the hero's journey, but that instinct, right? That's perfect for a hero, a superhero type of situation. You're in an ordinary world. So in Star Wars, Luke Skywalker was living on his uncle's farm, right? And then one day he gets a call to action. It's CP3, it's a R2-D2 showing this video of Princess Leia being captured, and she's asking, can someone rescue me? And then the inciting incident is his uncle and aunt get killed by the Empire. And now he goes on this fucking adventure. Now he goes from the ordinary world to the extraordinary world. And that's how the whole thing goes full loop. So yeah, the hero's journey, exactly. So there, I mean, we could talk right there. Is like call to adventure is right there. That's R2D2. Actually, Bilal, let me fire through this quickly. I won't waste too much of our time. But I have all the screens here. Yeah. Sorry, boys. I'm ruining the movie for Jack, but I'm sure he won't mind, unless you do mind. So
this will do for me, mate. Just tell me. I won't have to watch it.
I'll tell you. All right. So you've seen The Matrix, right? So when people ask me about filmmaking, first of all, don't ask me. I'm a complete amateur. But second of all, if you are going to ask me, I always say, if you want to learn the hero's journey, look at Star Wars and The Matrix, because those two, The Matrix basically aped Star Wars, which aped the hero's journey. So you guys remember this, right? Remember Neo? He starts. So for the listeners, I'm just showing the screenshots of like each part of the journey. But like Neo starts in the office. You guys remember that, right? He's a corporate worker.
That's ordinary world. All right.
Exactly.
Got it.
And then you guys will remember this. So this is Luke Skywalker getting the R2D2 message. And then you guys remember when Neo gets to follow the White Rabbit, right? That's the call to adventure. But here's the key. There's a refusal, because you have to show that the character is hesitant. So Luke actually tells Obi-Wan he doesn't want to go. And you guys remember Neo, right? He climbs out the building. They told him to escape and he doesn't. So this is the key. You meet your mentor. Luke meets Obi-Wan, and who does Neo meet? Morpheus, of course. And then crossing the threshold is taking the red pill. In Star Wars, that's when they go to this very dangerous kind of town that's known as Mos Eisley. And then I'll just keep firing too. But the next part everybody's familiar with is once you enter this other world, you start meeting your enemies and your friends. The enemies in Star Wars are obviously the stormtroopers, the friends, and Darth Vader. The friends were Chewbacca and Han Solo. So Harrison Ford from American Graffiti. And then same with Neo, he meets a bunch of people. But yeah, anyways, you fast forward through. But this is actually my favorite, is when you seize the sword. So when you seize the sword is you've gone to the extraordinary world and you take the power that the extraordinary world gives.
It's like in a game when you beat the big boss, right? Is that a similar thing?
Yeah, exactly. You have the you bring the power to bear that you've come from your adventure. So in Star Wars, they seize the sword as the plans for the Death Star, and then in Neo, as he finally realizes he can take on Agent Smith. And then the ending is beautiful, boys. This is gonna make me cry. The climax is when you use the weapon to prevail. So Neo obviously stops the bullets, and look at this. They actually do the same thing. So Luke here closes his eyes and shoots. Neo kind of closes at the bullets and just puts his hands out. And the end is amazing. You return with the elixir, but that means you bring your ability back to the world. So Neo famously flies away at the end of the Matrix to signify that he's the one. But anyways, that's a hero's journey in a nutshell. And the reason I bring that up, well, first of all, when it's told that way, does that, I mean, I know you guys probably knew the hero's journey, but when you look at it like that, what do you guys think? I think to me that maybe I'm overthinking.
That one with the Matrix one explained it much better for me, because I know Matrix way better than I know Star Wars, but I've heard people explain it with like Finding Nemo even. Like there's so many of these where they have the same sort of stuff. What about you, Jack?
Yeah, that's the formula, isn't it, boys?
Yeah.
That's it.
Jack, you can hyper-analyze every single Jack tweet, and it has a part of the hero's journey in there as well.
Hero's journey is one of the original build once, sell twice ideas.
Say more.
You know?
You did it like
you're fitting a narrative to a template that you know works to some degree, right? It's like, I'm sure film school is having you plot the story that you want to tell around that circle. Seems like you know, if you watch a film in the cinema, you rarely do you walk out with like we watch a film anyway. Rarely is like, did that break the mold of things that you expected to happen, right? Like
no,
it becomes like and I think the better the film, the closer it gets to making you think that they're going to break the template, but they rarely ever do. Yeah.
But they just did it so perfectly that you just were lost in how good it was, not actually seeing the format.
Yeah, you know who does it very well is Christopher Nolan. There's a YouTube video that
really?
I'll link to. But the last scene of every one of his most popular flicks, Inception, Dunkirk, the Batman movies, he doesn't give you closure like you do in the hero's journey. He's not giving you the image of Neo flying away. He gives you a very like, what the F is going on closure, the non-closure.
Trung, now that we've finally brought this up, because I know in episode 0 to episode 10, we had many requests from people to hear some stories about your script writing, because you sold a comedy film or comedy script to Fox, I believe. That used to be in your Twitter bio. I don't know if it still is. So just since we're talking about it, could you take us back to that moment and tell us some wild stuff that happened? Because I know the people that were buying it from you said some ridiculous stuff.
So I'll make, my first point will be this, correct? They did say ridiculous stuff. My second thing I'll bring up is we just filmed 2 episodes of a television show about the making of that script and my time living in Vietnam. It is currently being shot by CAA right now. So the reason I bring that up is we're going to have a full episode on that, boys.
Oh, no way.
The wheels are moving. The wheels of time are moving.
Wait, you just recorded this?
They are in Vietnam right now, a full film crew with the Hollywood team. They just filmed 2 episodes of a TV show I co-created and wrote.
That's wild.
So it's getting crazy.
Sick. Okay,
not a done deal yet. We're going to package and see if we can sell those 2 shows, episodes, and finish the rest of the show. That covered my time writing this script. Me and my co-writers writing about the movie that you mentioned. It's called The Lose. Is originally called White People in Asia. 90% of the original script would have gotten me canceled. So we had to rewrite it quite a bit. But the one thing I will mention is George Lucas getting roasted by producers for his content. We were told by producers on our first script that there were not enough monkeys in the film because it was set in Southeast Asia. And the irony is that the individual that said that has certainly never been to Southeast Asia. I can tell you right now, there are not a lot of monkeys in Vietnam. But the thing is, we set the movie actually in Laos, so a country neighboring Vietnam, much smaller country. The reason we set the movie in Laos is because I one day want to return to Vietnam, and we so badly skewer the country of Laos in the script that I'm like, you know what? Let's call it Laos so I can still go back to Vietnam, maybe never go back to Laos anymore. But we can talk about it more once that gets wrapped up. I'll just wrap up the rest of this story. We got 2 more points.
Gone.
So remember, it's a 9-part space epic. We just discussed the 6 films making $4 billion. So George Lucas now, it's the late 2000s, 2009, 2010. He wants to make the other 3 films. He wants to complete his space epic. But he's 70 years old. He's like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. It'll take me a decade to do it. So he sells to a little studio called Disney, Lucas Films. He sells it for $4 billion in 2012. The deal is for 50% cash, 50% stock. He received about 2% of Disney at the time. He's the second biggest shareholder after Stephen Jobs. And actually, 2012, Jobs had passed away in 2011. His wife, his widow, Laureen Powell Jobs, was the biggest single shareholder of Disney. She had 4% of Disney, so George Lucas was second. So he had 2% of Disney, and if you take that stake today, if he hasn't sold, which to my knowledge he has not, it's worth about $6 billion. So $6 billion of Disney, $4 billion when Disney bought it. That's $10 billion total, and including all the money he made during the merge. So he made $10 billion from the $350K he gave up. So there is the George Lucas story, boys.
Well, legend.
Thank you for listening.
For your TED Talk. No, thanks, Trung. That was a sick breakdown. Man, what a legend, man. So this is basically the most successful deal in Hollywood history, right?
Most successful. There are a couple other great ones. Like, I'll give you an example. Arnold Schwarzenegger let me ask you guys, what do you think movie he made the most money on? Just guess. Give me one guess, but I'll give one guess.
Well, I think I would automatically think Terminator, but because the way you asked it, it's going to be one of those weird ones, like the one with him and the mini dude.
What was that called?
Or like, I forgot what it's called, but okay. I think I've heard this before.
I was going to say, is Kindergarten Cop one of his?
Bilal, you got it, bro. It's twins.
Twins. That's it.
So I'll tell you what happened. They took crazy. Zero salary, zero, because Arnold wanted to do a comedy. Arnold Schwarzenegger, when he transitioned from bodybuilder to actor, and remember, he was a millionaire before he became a bodybuilder, or during it. He was a millionaire real estate owner.
Was it real estate, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So here, I'll give it quickly, and then we can move on to the next thing. But Arnold wanted to do comedy, and everybody's like, F off. Like the Kindergarten Cop was one of the films he ultimately did, but they're like, the studio's like, there's no chance we're letting you do a comedy, right? He's like, no, every movie I do has to open up the audience. That was his strategy. So every movie I do has to be a little bit different. So he goes to the studio. I'll make Twins with Danny DeVito and the director. Oh, fuck, I forgot the director's name.
That's the mini dude that I referred to.
The mini dude. They made Twins. They took 0%, but they took 40% of the back end. 40. It's the most money's ever made on a movie. But yeah.
That's mad.
But this George Lucas deal, not even close. It's just 10 bill basically after giving up 350K. So
Ivan Reitman was the director of that.
He just passed away.
All right.
Rest in peace. Yeah.
Killing it.
Oh my God. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks for the fun fact, fan Trunk. Definitely a special day for it. So let us know what you think of that one. Let's move on to the next topic we have here, boys. This is more of a philosophical discussion, as we like to do here. I'm just going to pull up this tweet here, which is going to seed the conversation. So I'm just going to read it out for people who aren't seeing the screen. It says, imagining an alternative universe where the Airbnb founders Obama owed cereal boxes were an NFT drop that generates $70 million, and then Airbnb didn't happen. And the image there, for people who aren't aware of this, was I don't know the full history, but these guys basically, when it was still called Air Bed and Breakfast, they basically created these cereal boxes and sold them, and they used that to like help fund the company or something along those lines. I'm gonna stop sharing, but yeah. So I guess the big, was there anything else on that story, the original story, that I've missed out, boys? From what you guys know?
No, I don't know what they raised either, but it was they sold them at a conference, I believe, or like they lived in a city on the West Coast, and there was
San Francisco.
Yeah, there was a conference happening, and they used it as like part promo for the people at the conference and to like raise some money for. Exactly. I can't imagine they raised a great deal of money, but it's a great story.
But I think I've heard. Is it like YC, like Y Combinator? Someone senior there, maybe Paul Graham, had talked about seeing this and it being an indicator of how creative and the marketing chops they have. And yeah, that story of them starting obviously is incredible. But yeah, they at this stage, it was still Air Bed and Breakfast. There were literally people sleeping on air mattresses in people's homes. That was, theirs was the first one, but they needed a way to raise money and raise awareness. And this is, I think, one of the ways they did it. But to extrapolate this out, the reason we're talking about this is what is going on in the space right now. We're going to talk about ApeCoin and Bored Ape Yacht Club, what's been happening there recently. We did a whole episode on decentralized Disney in the past, which kind of ties in with what we just discussed a little bit before. But now we're a little bit further down the line, and we're seeing more and more of these big launches. And the parallel I think about is the ICOs and this might be, a very blunt comparison, but on the most cynical side, the ICOs in 2017, lots of people had a white paper, they put it out there, they raised a bunch of money, whether that was 70 million or more, and then nothing basically came out of it. And I guess the question I have for you guys is, what do you think would have happened if this was happening today? Are the incentives completely screwed up? And, Airbnb, for example, I'll just say what I think. If they didn't have that incentive to keep building something and they just made $70 million, what was the point of them keep going? Like an idealistic entrepreneurial type's going to say, yeah, of course, I'll keep doing it because I love making Airbnb. But in reality, we know most people don't actually get to that stage. So I'll throw it over to you guys. What do you think it is?
Yeah, I think you're right. It just flips the incentive almost instantly. And the other, I think, way to think about it or to talk about it was that vehicle necessary for the creation of the thing, if that makes sense? Like if all the ownership or equity is distributed among this like crowd of people from day one, that also like is a different kind of risk or unpredictability that you introduce versus like YC cutting you a check, for example, right? The community that then goes on to evangelize the thing or like help the network effect spread. So I think like initially when I first saw that tweet, it was like genius comparison, but at the same time there's a genius like juxtaposition where you can position something as a way to raise money to build something else. But I think a lot of these NFT projects actually raise the money and then kind of reverse engineer what to build or what to like drip out and continually release to keep that momentum going. Like, and the other interesting thing about the NFT market is the speed of the feedback loops is so aggressive that like moving Airbnb from its first prototype to probably like the V2, you would have lost the interest of every single person participating in a market like NFTs because
they'll be in the Discord being like, right, what is going on with my Airbnb mattress was terrible. What's going on? It's uncomfortable. It deflated overnight. I'm selling my Airbnb coin.
Well, this is why I actually think any NFT project with like or any project that utilizes NFTs that has like an attachment to physical reality is at an enormous disadvantage because the feedback loop is so much slower. Totally.
Like to roll out the products, right? Like imagine raising, I know we're going to talk about this ApeCoin virtual land sale, but if you sold all that and then you had to go build all that stuff, like you said, it's like people will lose interest or like, oh wait, I don't actually want that anymore. But Jack, you actually sent an amazing thread. I know we're going to talk about it more, but it did kind of bring up this idea. It's like, it turns out that pre-launch tokens or like tokenizing things is an extremely costly way to do capital, right? It's like, because it might not be a financial like debt instrument where you have to pay interest, but it's sucking time away from your team, right? Like if you sell virtual land, like this thread that you added from Charles V, the E is the number 3, so maybe Web3, I don't know. He says it's a truly costly way to raise capital. You're taking on debt in the form of game design constraints. That's a great point. It's like you have to build the game a certain way now, right? And you corrupted the relationship with the player. That's really interesting. It's like it's not financial immediately apparent, but the cost will come eventually, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is also like when you talk about it hypothetically outside of the rest of the NFT market, the other thing that's, I think, become more apparent with time is like capital in that market just concentrates upwards. So because these things are so I want to say so liquid, it's not like a lot of fungible token markets, but they like, the cost to move in and out of projects is not that significant. So the capital tends to accrue to the bigger projects over time, right? Or there's like a gravitational pull upwards. So those projects, I think, have to, not even have to, I think those projects like inflate the scope of the things they're building relative to the amount of money they continue to raise. You have to kind of keep pace with what the market, I mean, this is a really interesting and like, I think difficult thing to understand is like, does the marketing or the promise of the thing that's being built in the future meet or exceed the current price of these assets that are related to it in some way? So that's like a bigger philosophical discussion that I think is like more chicken and egg, right? Did these guys plan to build this thing before this thing went completely parabolic, or did it go parabolic? And then it's like, shit, what can we build? Who can we work with? How can we spend $500 million and keep like bringing money into the ecosystem? And just as a function of how much money's come into the system, it's like your plans just automatically get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and the price of the assets go up. Like the expectations of the people who hold them are like, this thing that you're building is going to be the greatest experience to ever happen on a computer screen, right? That's the level of expectation you start to seed. And I think some of those threads are really interesting. It's like people don't realize how difficult it is to develop like a AAA game with like, even studios that have 20, 30 year veterans of the craft have like release shit that just completely bombs, right? And in the same way, the game market is kind of cornered by a few players, the Fortnites, the Robloxes, and I forget the top few lists, but like the network effect of those things is so incredibly powerful. And to me, the game in the NFT world is the like financialization and the market component of it, right? That's like the most entertaining part of the game, is like the assets changing hands right now. And to like make something more compelling and adrenaline fueled than that is going to be an amazingly difficult challenge, in my opinion.
Oh, dude, that's such a great point. How can you make a game better than the game of basically the capital markets gambling
flip.
element? Yeah.
That's the ultimate game, right? And it's like you're actually distracting from that by building an environment outside of that.
That's what he says here. Corrupted relationship with the player, right? It's like, how could you possibly enjoy this game as much as the flip?
Well, I think that's another thing. It's like, that's why like specifically like Yuga is just, there'll be marketing case studies on this for hundreds of years, probably, like how it's such a delicate line to walk. Like you continue to like, these are all semantics that we've like become accustomed to, right? It's like, it's not a video game because it's not like, you don't have a boot up screen and you're like, in this one game environment. But I would argue that it's already a video game, right? And even every element that they add over time and these different dynamics that they bring in, it's just like, yeah, it might happen across these 5 or 6 different platforms, Twitter, Discord, OpenSea, all these like marketplaces, but they're kind of the meme, like participating in the financial component of the meme. That's the game.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I'm just thinking of
you've dabbled. Tell us your thoughts.
I think it's a great frame on it, because if you strip down what a game is, again, definitely not a gaming expert, and from the few games I've played, like you said, there's those elements. And I'm thinking, even I did an interview with a guy called Rahul Vora, who's got a company called Superhuman, and he's a game designer, that's his background, and now they sell $30 a month email software, right? And everyone's like, why would you pay money for that? But then sadly, I still pay $30 a month because it works way better for me than everything else. And he explained like the gaming dynamics within even just their software. And this is part great marketing and sales, but also when you think about how they've actually designed it, like keyboard shortcuts, like the speed of things happening, that dopamine when you get the inbox 0, which sounds really sad saying that out loud, but that's kind of how they've designed it.
It's a game.
It's literally a game when you're doing it. So translating that to NFTs as a specific example, yeah, we're not just in one PlayStation and a TV scenario. But if you think what games have evolved from, they went from, playing on your own against a computer to multiplayer, playing on the internet with a headset on, speaking to friends or speaking to random people. And that's kind of being replaced there, right? We're playing a game on a phone and a laptop instead of having a headset on and talking on PlayStation Network or whatever, and like shouting at some random stranger in Brazil for beating me at FIFA, I'm texting my friend or in Discord listening like, oh, there's a new drop coming. There's a time constraint. Like there's all these different things. Have you done that?
Have you argued with a kid in Brazil?
I mean, I'll definitely not answer to that question, but yeah.
Yo, dude, I used to be sick with Drogba, bro. You get me on this thing? Oh,
Drogba, that's how you're aging yourself there, man. He's a legend, but even though, let's move on from the
hold
Chelsea
on. Let me get one last thought.
legend.
One last thought. Packy McCormick, our friend, he called it the great online game, right? He's like,
that's it.
What do people at investment banks do? They push things on keyboard that change numbers and numbers move up and down. It's like everything you described, right? The Discord and slanging NFTs with your buddies, or playing games and talking shit to an 8-year-old in Brazil, which is what Bilal used to do.
That's it. Yeah. Confirm or deny. Not doing. But yeah, so I definitely agree. The other thing I was going to bring up was something, Jack, I think you've talked about this before, but essentially it's much easier to sell the vision of something in the future, and Trung, you've talked about this with Tesla as well, and Elon, than delivering on something the market wants. And that's the reason why growth stocks, if we're coming outside of NFTs and crypto, that's why their PE ratios, their price to earning ratios, traditionally are way higher, because you're paying for 10 years in the future. And the story of one day Netflix is going to be streamed by everyone in the world. One day everyone's going to use cloud computing, etc., etc. So it's not like they all obviously had real businesses, real customers and stuff, but the valuation is the second part. Is it a fair valuation? And like we've said on the show many times, the valuation is as fair as the market decides. And when the market changes its mind, or people change their mind, the price changes. So in this case, we're going to come on to a story in a second about Yuga Labs and how their whole thing went down. But I bringing it back to the original question about Obama owes the cereal as an NFT. To me, it's way easier just to say one day we're going to have this cool world with a metaverse and everyone's going to be playing, and we're going to have the Soho house in the cloud and it's going to be so cool. And then me and Jack, no disrespect to Bored Ape Yacht Club and in NFT NYC, but we go to an event and it's 99% dudes, and that's not Soho house, obviously. And it's just like, very specific type of person, which I love all those people, but it's very different from cool in air quotes in the real world, which is what it's kind of being positioned as. And so anyway, I think that is a long way of saying there's a lot more to this than just pitching an idea, because in the future you eventually have to deliver some of that, and when you don't, it comes tumbling down a lot of the time. The longer you can wait before you make it real, whatever that threshold is, that's a game on the other side. Is like I'm not talking about the other side. The project is called the other side, but that's quite an apt crossover there. Like the gymnastics of maintaining a narrative to like drum up belief to raise the money to build the thing. But we're also like living in a time where like you can create like these collective hallucinations easier than you've ever been able to before, right? Like we're especially in the last 2 years, like people have piled into like spending time in front of screens and networking exclusively on the internet, and even like doing this podcast. Like we started doing this before we met each other 6 months in. Like if you told me 3 or 4 years ago I'd be doing this, we're like, there's no chance, right? It's just the behavior has been so normalized. And there's like, I think you can be really cynical about it and be like, community. I think we talked about this last week, like the hijacking of the word community to really be about like people who are purely aligned with their financial pumping
interest.
Bags.
Right. Number go up is the name of the community, right? In some cases. And then there's, again, the chicken and egg scenario there, whether it's like, is there a community because of that? Or is it the number going up because of the community? And in a lot of cases, probably previous, or maybe a mix of the two. It's not something that words are really adequate to explain. They're like social phenomenons that you just sort of, I don't know, I guess you know it when you're experiencing it, and then people on the outside of it just think it's completely absurd and ridiculous. But honestly, I've been surprised by the like how strong this stuff has held up, given the like macro conditions. I'm sure a lot of other people are in that place too. But it's like it is an alternate reality. Like every day we get closer to be able to live in a like legitimate alternate reality. Like you can live in a place where you have 99% of your social interaction through a computer screen. Like it doesn't matter where you are geographically, even like getting stuff delivered to your house. Like you don't even need to go anywhere. technology is like this weird thing to augment your existence in very strange ways. So I think it can be a great thing, and it can also be like, it's like a byproduct of some of the shortcomings of our physical reality too, right? It's like it's a response to something that people are obviously lacking in other areas of their life. Not to say that's good or bad. It's just like rushing into a void that obviously exists. That's why this thing continues to run like it does.
Completely. I'm just going to add one more thing. Trung, you might have a thought, but can I just add one thing on
I got no thoughts. I know we want to talk about Yuga after I go nuts, man.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, the one parallel I wanted to bring up, we talked about how different is this, where people can essentially raise the equivalent of a seed round or way more. This is 70 million is not a seed round. That's a Series A, Series B. I don't even know the amounts nowadays because they keep changing. But it's a huge amount of money, right? And even I know people who literally have an email newsletter, which 99.99% of the world doesn't know who they are, and they raise $1 million doing a random NFT project, and they're actually using it to they're hiring people, they're trying to actually create something, and that was a way for people to buy into the community or buy into a brand, their brand, right? So I'm not against anyone trying that out. I think it's cool for people to try it out if they kind of know what they're doing, or at least they are transparent about what it means, and they're not necessarily promising the world. And it's not only based on, in my opinion anyway, the NFT projects which are only based on this future vision, or on the flip side, if it's only based on people making money, that is also dangerous in itself as well, because they both have their own flaws. I think someone who does have something to say, I'm going to do something long term with this, I'm going to be around, I'm going to keep creating, for example, in email newsletter, if you're going to keep writing that forever or for the next 5 years, and by buying an NFT it's going to give you access to that, the same way a Patreon paying in dollars would have, but you're kind of creating a new economic model for that. I think that's interesting. Now the thing I wanted to bring up was VC backed companies. We're talking about Airbnb. What does it take for Airbnb to exist? It took, very smart founders, initial money, early customers, and then those rounds after that where they hired more people, figured out a problem, improved the product, then got the next 1 million people in, next 10 million people in, etc., etc. I don't think for sure if they had that liquidity from day one where they could have pumped their bag, sold it, and then, retired, I don't think they would have done that. At the same time, to be honest about, there's a lot of founders who in the Silicon Valley mode made 99% of their net worth by playing the VC game, had a company that went to zero, and they still managed to kind of make a decent amount from secondary. And I'm not going to say any names, but certain people who I know who...
Name and Bilal.
No, but I mean, where they made way more money from investing that and then their friends' startups, and then they made zero from their startups themselves. Again, I'm not taking anything away from them. That is still a skill in itself, and they put themselves in that position. But the cynical side would say, well, that was its own Ponzi scheme, right? Ponzi may be a strong word, but that was its own pyramid, right, where again, breaking it down instead of using those loaded words, it's about the incentive. I see companies every week doing this where I'm seeing the product. I'm even seeing the numbers if I work with some of these people. And I'm like, how are these guys raising at the next round? And the reason is because they've got amazing investors on the first round. And those people then go pump the bags to their other friends and say, hey, we're a great VC brand. We've got all these returns. Why don't you come and join us in this charade? And now it's starting. Yeah, and it's basically coming home to roost now because those valuations are going to be down rounds now, right? Because they're not raising at the same amounts as they were before. So they're still probably going to be fine. And I'm not saying they were necessarily trying to scam the world, but I do see people in the traditional kind of startup world look at the crypto world and say, oh, everyone's just there trying to pump their bags. The truth is,
same bollocks.
Everyone's trying to pump their bags. Do you know what I'm saying? So what are we talking about?
Editor, cut the clip.
Yeah. Now you see me on the news. Bilal Zaidi caught pumping his own bags. But yeah, so anyway, that was just kind of my thoughts on it. the last thing to mention there is, if you've got something that's liquid and you're getting instant feedback, like you're saying, it no longer becomes about just convincing 10 partners at VC firms that your company is still going in the right direction. It's thousands or tens of thousands of people. The same way, when you go public, you've got millions of people on your back and you've got to share your earnings every quarter. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I'm feeling about it. It probably kind of brings us on to the next topic in a second, but let me throw it over to you guys in case you had any other thoughts.
I think we should tee up Yuga because we've been dancing around this. So whoever's got the deets, drop it.
All right. Jack, anything else before we do that? It's going to be related.
The next part is
it's related,
we'll
right?
round it off, yeah.
Cool. So let's break it down. I'm going to tee you up, Jack, because you can, you know a bit more than I do about this. But the summary I'm reading here, again, source is Mooncat 3725 or something like that. So a very valid source here.
We always hit him up. Always hit Mooncat. Yeah,
Yuga Labs, who are the owners of, Bored Ape Yacht Club and also now own the rights to CryptoPunks. They had a launch recently, and essentially the headline is there was over $100 million worth of dollars or ETH lost in gas fees. And they essentially were kind of like pointing the fingers at Ethereum.
What were they selling?
Jack, what were they selling? Was it the
plots of virtual land? Yeah, for a metaverse called The Other Side.
Okay,
there we go. So, and they also launched something called ApeCoin, right? And this has been happening.
Yeah, this was a couple weeks. I don't know if we covered that or not, but they launched an ApeCoin. That's got to be 6 weeks ago or something now, and they rewarded a lot of everyone in the ecosystem that was holding their assets was airdropped ApeCoin, and then this mint of the land was sold exclusively in ApeCoin. So putting volume through that.
And I just did want to bring up, while we're talking about it, this is an amazing tweet that Jack shared with us in the group chat. 1 second here. Can you guys see my screen here? So, it basically says, my brother is about to learn a very valuable lesson about NFTs because his brother Mike texted him, said, my transaction failed. When do I get my money back? And for anyone who's not been playing around in MetaMask and doing the crypto world, that money is not coming back. So
you know what though? I think after all the outcry, I think Yuga Labs is issuing some refunds.
Oh, nice.
Okay, well,
$100 million worth,
that may be total speculation from me, but I did read that somewhere.
Let me get some numbers on the nitty gritty because I pulled it up here. So each plot cost a buyer around $5,800 based on ApeCoin's Saturday price. So the transaction cost to mint other deed NFTs. So this is the other side, which is what Jack talked about the project. So it costs 123 mil. So people will be getting pieces of land, which was worth what? Maybe a couple hundred, and maybe a couple thousand, but they're paying.
I think they cost. It was like 305 ape, which I guess is about $6,000.
Okay, so they're paying about that in gas fees, right?
They paid, a lot of people are paying 2 Ethereum, 3 Ethereum in gas to claim. These are existing holders because the network was so congested when the mint went live. And I'm going to mess up the details of this, but they made a big statement about how they'd structured it to avoid gas fees at scale, like exorbitant gas fees. And that obviously was not the case when the network was actually under the load that they
put it on.
They put it on, but it's also like an interesting, debate whether like Ethereum, these assets. I think this is a whole other discussion that we have where like Ethereum block space or like transacting on the Ethereum network is like, if people are prepared to pay that, that's the market telling you what you need to know, right? About someone made this comparison the other day, said, if Ethereum was a product and, Warren Buffett's criticism of a cash flowing product, people spent $100 million to use it last night.
Yeah.
It's no different than, any other cash flowing business in a lot of ways. It's like, it's delivering that value to the people that are maintaining the network. Anyway, there was a lot of like talk about the contract not being optimized to reduce gas fees. And then Vitalik actually got involved in that conversation. I think he said that wouldn't have made that much difference. It's just purely like this, this is like a use case for something that was never envisioned when the thing was built, right? It's like a really, it's an interesting...
When you say the thing, you mean when Ethereum was built, or when
Ethereum,
Apecoin?
Right?
Yeah.
I'm sure Vitalik and company were not sitting there going, "Oh, we got to optimize this for people buying."
They specifically did not. They did not. It was not in the white paper.
They definitely didn't have flipping monkey ape gifs.
Well, guys, we can chat about this shortly after, because I interviewed one of the founders of CryptoKitties last week, Arthur Camara. He's the head of product for NBA Top Shop. But we can talk about this, right? Because he was talking about like, we'll discuss the Dapper Labs thing, but he also discusses this. It's like NFTs were not a use case, right? It's like, to Jack's point, it's like this was not envisioned. But I think, Jack, this was another thread you sent, but it looked like there were very simple ERC 721, which is a non-fungible token standard, moves that they could have done to save money. But it sounds like Vitalik said, maybe not.
Ish. Yeah.
And so wait,
I think that's
as
the
an
interesting
example,
thing.
Sorry, could I say, because I read people were saying you could have whitelisted people essentially or something like that. So they're in the contract. So when they're going to like mint something, they're not
less battling for space because it's just approving an existing commitment.
Yeah. Which again, I just read that on the internet. So this could be all vibes, no facts. But I think that sounds about right.
Another thing is like they did a KYC thing for a bunch of people. You had to be KYC'd to make a claim. And our friend 6529 did a big breakdown of the terms and conditions of the mint in the like you KYC. These assets are protected by like Hong Kong law. You don't own this thing. Again, I'm not using the words that are actually written
not
in
legal
the
advice.
thread. This is not legal advice, exactly. But go and read 6529's breakdown of the specificity in the terms and conditions of the other side mint. And this is another big philosophical discussion around like, these things that begin by using the narrative of decentralization and owning your digital property, things of that nature. And when they get to a certain level of success, Andreessen Horowitz owns a good chunk of it. Like they have to draft up way more sophisticated legal agreements. They're doing partnerships with companies that have like shareholders that are, bound by certain laws. So it kind of drifts away from the ideology that I think catapulted it to the thing it was
in the
before
first place.
It is now. So it's it's really fascinating psychologically to watch it play out, because, when you've got a couple $1 million riding on this ecosystem, your opinions that you voice.
Billions.
I'm talking about individuals.
I'm
talking about people on Twitter,
like
per Twitter account, like the way people will talk and like the amount of conflict that erupted in the wake of that mint on Saturday was kind of fascinating to watch out. It's just tribalism in a different context, right? This is Democrats and Republicans on chain.
Yeah. So sorry. Yeah. This was who's presenting this? Is this Trunk?
This is you. Yeah, Bilal. You sent us this tweet
from
Kobe,
I was looking for that actually. This is hilarious.
Why don't you read it out? No, go ahead.
All right, Kobe tweeted this. ApeCoin should legitimately swap from being ERC20 token to being an ETH fork with rails off like OG BNB, which is Binance. Is that Binance Network something?
Binance
I don't know. Yeah, something like that. Their community is too powerful. They can clone Maker, Aave, Uniswap, Ape Dollar, Arpay, Ape Swap, etc. Pay gas fees in Ape55 will defeat DeFi if they take this strategic step. All right, so
first of all, is he being kind of facetious?
Yeah, I think he's being facetious. Yeah, for sure.
Because ApeCoin, because they did talk about it in the statement, right? Because Jack mentioned that ApeCoin put out a statement. Some people thought they were assigning blame to Ethereum, but they did actually say, it's like, we might have to create our own kind of network.
Yeah, I saw that they were, and actually this one came to mind. This was from our boy Tom Osman. He, if you guys can see my screen here as well, it was a picture of Yuga shooting $160 million and then turning around saying, "Why would Ethereum do this?" I thought that was pretty jokes.
Wait, hold on. As we're at the point, I think this is so. As with everything, this is we call it the Bilal Zaidi standard. Is like, why couldn't non-crypto take care of this, right? So, Aaron Levy, the CEO of Box, who is a very tasteful critic of Web3. Most of the leaders of Web3 engage with him, right? He's so Aaron Levy was basically saying that, well, you know what, man, this problem that we're having with Ethereum and these projects, the main difference is you cannot control the behavior of the individuals, right? So they had 55,000 pieces NFT, and then you had all these people rushing in, right? And his point was, I think the number was crazy. It was like AWS handles like this type of volume like 50 times on the regular, right? And nothing happens. And Aaron Levy's point is like, you know, you can architect in Web 2, something like this without it falling or crashing. And he says, just because you're getting this rush of activity for individuals that you can't control is like, yeah, that's separate from the fact that the architecture of it just cannot handle it, right? And
at the moment, and you could say that would change potentially, but I think it's a very fair criticism, and I agree. That question, like you said, is does it need to be crypto? In terms of you could create an app that sells X amount of virtual whatever to people, but would this whole thing exist if there was no crypto? For sure it wouldn't, right? Because being driven by that market. Again, the second layer to that question is how important is decentralization and owning your own keys in that scenario? So what he mentioned there is we can't do this because people own their own keys, which essentially that's exactly the promise of what people are creating here. And if this was something that wasn't just a picture of a monkey or virtual plot of land or whatever, it was something more meaningful that actually might be there in the future. You might argue
meaningful, but Bilal, this is a subjective call here, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I was muted there, but you would have heard an outrage on my side over here.
Wait, so I mean,
meant like a housing deed or something very boring like that.
Whoa. Okay, wait. Actually, Jack. So last week we never had a chance to talk about it, but Bilal brought it. So Jack, you made your first mortgage payment recently.
I did, boys.
There we go.
No, listen, you've had
Congrats.
your foot. Yeah, congratulations, or I'm sorry. I don't know which one.
Both. I'll take both.
But you've had your foot in both camps. You have been a Bored Ape previously, quite active in that community, and now you are a owner of a home, a real deed, if you will. So talk us through the value calculations of owning bricks versus the clicks.
Well, you know why I actually originally wanted to talk about this was how difficult it was to pay the mortgage. So because of the unique situation I find myself in, the nature of my income and my employment situation, you're not getting a mortgage from Wells Fargo, right? It's
you're getting it from Jim in the alley behind 7-Eleven.
It's being farmed out to more risk tolerant
niche
capital allocators, shall we say, right?
Yeah.
Who don't tend to have the most sophisticated infrastructure, right? So I was telling Bilal the other day, I was like, you just get like 40 letters in the post. They're obviously just, automated. Nobody's like really checked on what's going on. I don't know what infrastructure is sending these things out. I'm trying to call people. I'm ringing the numbers on the no answer. Like can't get hold of anybody. And then I exchange a few emails. It's like, oh yeah, just send it to this. I was like, what's the account number? There is no account number. Just send the routing number. I was like, is that going to work? And then go to my normal bank. I can only you can't do a domestic wire from the bank that I just got switched to. You have to send it, you have to send them the details and they'll physically send a check.
Fax it over.
It's just insane, man. And then all this to say, the juxtaposition of transacting in crypto for such a long time, relative to the existence of crypto. I mean, not a long time, but it's just so different. Like I had to call my bank and say, hey, these guys are telling me that they didn't receive the money. And they're like, no, here's a 49-digit number that you can give them that they can take to, the clearinghouse and check with them if the versus like, hey, here's a like check mark where the network proves that this money moved from here to here and we can both see it instantly. So outside
sovereign money there, Jack. There you
exactly.
go.
Outside of speculating on JPEGs or whatever else, like the real value proposition of crypto in my mind is, custody of your capital and the ability to move it and see that it moved and have no trusted third party in the middle of that transaction for 9 hours on the phone and me wasting my time. So,
It's
amen.
creating $1 billion block of energy in space that can move at the speed of light.
You missed Cyber Hornets.
Yeah. With Cyber Hornets. So,
well, the irony of it is I'm talking about stable coins on Ethereum there.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah,
but that's true.
In time, we'll get there. But that juxtaposition is kind of fascinating. Is like, there's so much like anarchy and like madness and stuff that like the person who typically pays a mortgage today would have no interest in being exposed to or learning about or anything else, versus the experience of paying a bill or like settling a transaction instantly and knowing it's there. And there's just no need for the trillions of layers of complexity. Yeah. I mean, not even saying there's a need, like this is accident of history type situation, right? It's just infrastructure that's decades old and nobody's like has malicious intent, but maybe there are fewer incentives to tidy up, because if you're an administrator whose job is to, move this piece of paper from this side of the desk to that side of the desk in 10 hours, you're not in a hurry to wipe yourself out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's a way to put it.
And like America, I think, is uniquely buggered in that regard. Like think about like medicine as well. It's a disgrace. Yeah. But that's a topic for another day, boys.
Yeah, that's true. No, that makes sense. I will say on the flip side, Venmo works pretty well. Peer-to-peer centralized network that, like, just to keep it real from the other side, though, obviously on the back end, it's all being processed in kind of like a similarly old way. And I'm still, see the value in what we're talking about here. But
I couldn't pay my mortgage with Venmo, Bilal. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, that's true. I recently got
wants
paid
to build
in
the Venmo mortgages, I'll support it for sure.
Yeah, for real. Someone, I had to send an invoice to someone in another country, and they were sending me a wire transfer, and I basically had to send account, like,
Dude,
bank details and I'm like, is this safe for me to be sending? They need the bank details, which I think are also just not safe to share. Whereas in the UK, it's quite normal to share like account number, sort code or whatever with friends where we're sending stuff, but especially 10 years ago when I lived there. Whereas here, I'm pretty sure that's not really what you're supposed to be doing. So I might have messed something
kingdom,
up there.
Right?
That's basically the private key under the kettlebell is just being sent.
I remember the first time I came to the States using a credit card. Do you remember that, Bilal? We just give them the card.
Oh, they put it behind the bar?
They just give it back. They just give it back to you. It's like,
here you go.
Yeah, done. Off you go.
Done.
Even in the supermarket. No PIN number, nothing. Just do a little Mickey Mouse
PIN number. That's what I mean.
It took them forever to get the PIN, the security thing.
Even now you don't. Even now they've got the PIN, but they don't make you type in a number. It's just you just sign. So I sign Mickey Mouse all the time. It doesn't even just to see if anyone's reading it, or Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole. Just see if they think I'm famous. But the other thing that was for me is people taking it behind the bar and leaving it there all night.
Oh yeah.
Knowing like not to go too far down the rabbit hole. Like in the UK, I've watched a few Vice documentaries on what people do, and it's like just leaving your card with someone unsupervised is the worst thing you could be doing.
They can steal the information, put it through a main. It's 100%. So easy. Well, I knew someone. This is I knew someone. Don't try to attribute this to me.
A friend.
But man, like back in the early 2000s, you could literally get stolen easily. Steal a credit card. Just leave it, right? You go to a club and you just tip, hey, open a tab. That's it. zero security. So the one thing I will say about the old banking industry, Jack's like, all these layers, these trillions of layers, and I think a bit of it is a feature.
Fan coming through.
Yeah, a bit of it.
Defending the rent seekers.
Yeah,
go off.
Rent seekers. I love the use of the word rent seeker.
It's a feature,
free
not
rider
a
problem.
Okay, so instead of like you don't need 1,000 layers, right? You might need 50 layers or 10 layers. You need something. But let me bring up this slide quickly. So this is your boy Trung T Phan.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there it is,
I thought
boys.
you had a sleeveless hoodie there, but it's a half. Is it a hoodie though?
Oh yeah, it's a sleeveless hoodie, boys.
Here?
Sleeveless hoodie, boys.
Killing it.
So this is Casey Lau. He's a host at Collision, a big conference in Toronto, huge conference. I had no idea actually until he told me about it. Great dude.
It's the same people as Web Summit, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, yeah. They're Irish originally, my boy.
No, exactly. Yes, they are.
Yeah,
Irish.
Dara and Paddy.
So do you know them?
I know Dara really well. Paddy is the original guy, but yeah.
Let him know that
killed it across the world.
I was crushing with Casey, and this is Arthur Cameron. He was Camara. Sorry for pronouncing the last name wrong there. He's the head of product at NBA Top Shot, one of the co-founders of CryptoKitties. So he's an OG. And we got up there, and this is Sunil. He's at 500 Startups. He also is a host at Collision. But well, first of all, special shout out to 3 NIA listeners that were nice enough to approach me during the talk.
Yeah, so we saw some pictures. Yeah,
we saw
legends.
the picture. Mass, Jordan, and Peter. Thank you for coming to the talk. Thank you for listening. If you made it this far, an hour and 20 minutes in, really appreciate you guys coming to say hi. And the only thing I'll add here, we can probably talk about a bit more because it's a long talk, but Arthur was talking about CryptoKitties early days. They also jammed the network, right, in 2017.
Yeah.
When CryptoKitties came out. And that's why they built Flow with Dapper Labs. It's as our old friend Packy wrote in a 65,000 word story about Flow. He said, there's a trilemma with blockchains. It's scale, security, and decentralization. And Flow's and Dapper Labs' whole philosophy is this progressive decentralization. So they start quite, not necessarily centralized, but they're willing to make the trade-off just to get things off the ground. And clearly, as I argued in our talk, other than Satoshi and Vitalik, you can make a pretty credible argument that between CryptoKitties and NBA Top Shot, Dapper Lab has brought on more people into the crypto ecosystem than Vitalik and Satoshi. So they're number 3.
That's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty valid argument, right? Maybe the OpenSea guys.
How many of them stayed?
Yeah.
That's retention there's a little.
Original OG from the CryptoKitties communities were they ended up launching Axie and OpenSea. So
yeah, that's big.
Kind of this period, but we talk more about that after. But I just want to give a shout out to again Mass, Jordan, and Peter.
Yeah, respect.
But
how was the talk, mate? Smashed it?
Was good, man. Dude, I'll tell you something. You guys will have a laugh. I brought my parents because
love it.
Listen, people need to understand, and some people are confused, like joking about it. Listen, the older you get, man, I'm 37. I'm not gonna have many more opportunities to hang with my parents. I can make an argument that might be the last time they ever see me speak in public. If you consider the fact that I've spoken in public once in the past 6 or 7 years. So I'm bringing my parents, gonna have some free alcohol, gonna get some free food. They're gonna see their boy chopping it up. So
they must
great,
have been proud. Was your dad giving some feedback straight after?
Well, I'll tell you about my old man, Dr. Cat Fan. This might be similar to some of your parents, but do you ever go to the theater or have you ever been to the theater with your parents and they start sleeping in the back? That's my dad. He's one of those guys. Full on dead ass
Uncle
snoring.
Fan in there.
2 minutes into the film, full on snoring. Like the dude, when the older people can sleep anywhere? Like my dad's like that. I'm just like, Dad, you're sitting in the second to front row. You cannot start snoring, bro. So I told my mom, get the elbows ready. Get one of these ready, right? But no, it's fun. But it's fun. Next year, hopefully I'll go to Toronto, which is the main event. As Bilal knows, these things are huge. They get 40, 50,000 in Lisbon. They get 40.
Yeah, that's the Web Summit one. It's huge. We should definitely do it. Why don't we do it
as NIA next year?
That's true.
They want it.
We might even do it this year. It's only May.
Yeah.
Yes.
Guys, we're doing it. All right. That's it for me on this part.
Let's do it. If you run an event and you want to get Trung there and his parents fly him out,
Yeah.
Just you know where to holler at him. So he's this that you taking it all serious there, but no, all jokes aside, that's cool, man. I completely agree. It is nice to be able to share that with the parents, because especially when you get older and you like live away, like you live kind of close to them, I assume, if you're in Vancouver.
I do now, but I was gone
but you were
for a very
away
long
for
time.
many years, so now you appreciate it, I'm sure, even more. Yeah, I'm literally going in a few days to see my parents for the second time in 2.5 years since.
Jack just saw his parents.
Crazy.
And they watched a lot of YouTube. So there you go.
1 month stay at the Butcher household, killing the game. All right. Anyway, so just to reel it back in, boys, I think that was a really good chat on Yuga Labs. Referenced our boy Mooncat as always, and then I will say I'll share this in the show notes. Yuga Labs did do kind of their own thread. I think one of us mentioned it already. If you just go on at Yuga Labs, you'll see it as well. But they basically gave their point of view, which I think is fair to share as well, because we don't know the exact truth here. That is when they talked about, you know, we're sorry for turning off the lights on Ethereum for a while. We think that we're going to have to create our own chain, that sort of stuff, which Kobe was referencing in his kind of shit post earlier. So I think worth checking out as well. Anything else on that, boys, before we wrap it up?
I got nothing else, boys. Let's not even do the methane thing.
Yeah, I think we can leave that maybe for next time or something, because I think we went deep on this one. All right, cool. Let's call it then. And thanks again for being here. We appreciate you guys. We love you guys, and we'll see you on the next one. And have a good week until then.
Yeah, happy May the 4th.
Peace.
Oh, actually, last thing I will say, Eid Mubarak to the people celebrating this week. It was Eid yesterday, so by the time this comes out 2 days ago, or I don't know if you guys know this, but in the Muslim world, Eid is on several different days because people arguing which day it is. It's a long.
I was unaware.
People following the lunar calendar, so maybe there's a fun fact fan coming one day on.
No, that's your fun fact.
That is my fun fact fan. Yeah. It's like an ongoing joke. You'll get messages on WhatsApp from people, and then it's people like, no. There's a place in London called Lee Bridge Road Mosque where I grew up, and that was always the outlier mosque where they would call it 2 days later just to mess with people. But anyway, yeah, Eid Mubarak is basically like Christmas for Muslim people. So end of Ramadan. Hope you're enjoying the food. For the 3 people listening to this that are celebrating, and we appreciate you guys.
I think there's more, man. There's more.
There might be. We might be getting there. Anyway, thanks again for being here, and we will see you next week. Cheers.
Thank you, boys.